All right, I am Rachel Woody. I'm here with Tom Meicho, and it's July 7th, 2015. And our first question for you, Tom, is why Linfield?
Why Linfield? Well, my mother came here in 17 and 18 when the college had an academy. So she was still in high school. My grandmother came down from Spokane and rented the house behind Grover Cottage, which we called for a number of years the Hesmer House. She was going to provide room and board for men because men could live off campus. But there were no men. The war was on. And so she went back to Spokane. My mother stayed here for the rest of the year. Lived in a house which used to be the old Delta house. And she laughed when I became a Delta. I grew up in Bremerton, Washington. And whenever somebody came from Linfield, speech department, music department, vice president, whoever, often stayed at our house and had at least a meal. So Linfield's always been in the back of my mind, but I didn't really give it much thought. One day I came home from high school, my senior year. You could do this in your senior year. And I said, the University of Washington was there on our campus, and we all listened. And I think I'm going to go to the University of Washington. Dead silence. Finally, my father spoke. If you want to go to the University of Washington, you may, but we'll pay for your way to go to Linfield. So I had never been on the campus. I had seen some pictures. So I talked two of my buddies to come down with me. We all arrived sight unseen. And it was the best decision I could have made. And I'm glad my father made it for me in some respect. As a student coming in to Linfield in the fall of 1947, the war was over. A lot of GIs were in the student body. And so along Lever Avenue, along Linfield Avenue, were all kinds of apartments, prefab jobs, which housed married students. Mack Hall was a men's dorm. I'm not sure about Pioneer. I think it was men. Grover Cottage, Failing Hall, women. Because of the influx of freshmen directly out of high school, they didn't have enough room and beds. So they set up a lot of beds in the old gym. And they were there for the fall semester. Memorial opened just before Thanksgiving. When I came down here, I lived in Mack Hall with two other students. The hall was designed to handle 2 to a room. The same with Failing. When my wife came down, she was in a 2-bedroom unit, but 3 people were living there. So it was a very interesting time. While my freshman year and sophomore year, we had baby contests, believe it or not, and the GIs would parade their babies along the stage. And I'm not sure whether there was a contest or anything like that, but I remember that. During those early years, we had chapel, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Friday was a student body meeting day. Monday and Wednesday could be religious oriented, or it could be a lecture from somebody outside or inside the faculty. You were required to go to chapel. You had to give your name to the students standing there, and they'd check you off the list. Or you gave a slip to them. I don't remember all of that. So those were the kind of experiences I had. One that I marked down is where El Primo is now, was a coffee shop. Right now I can't think of the name of it. But anyway, my first couple nights I went over and had a cup of coffee, and I sat there with a cup of coffee and poured cream and sugar, and I heard in the background, "Well, I see the freshmen have arrived." And from that day forward, until I experienced lattes, there were no cream, no sugar in my coffee. I wasn't going to be one of those silly freshmen. I joined the Deltas, and it was a good, positive experience. One of the things they did was to take you out in the hills. And so we were taken out, I think it was Jerry Gano, but I'm not sure. Jerry and I did sit in the Delta House and smoked a cigar during the Eisenhower-Dewey elections. And we were listening to that and also trying to see how much ash we could produce. Silly, but that was fun. The Delta would take us out to the hills someplace. And so we were left out of the car, walking around. I had no idea, we had no idea where we were. All of a sudden, headlights showed up. It was a young couple. And we told them our predicament, and they gave us a ride back to Cookies. That was the name of the restaurant. So we were sitting in Cookies, having coffee, when the brother came back, and they were just flabbergasted that we were there. And we never did tell them how we got there. But there were a lot of interesting experiences like that. My freshman year, no dancing on campus. We had a dance, and I asked the gal out in the Hudson Cafe, which is next door to the Crescent, we think. The following year, yes, dances were on campus. Sororities and fraternities had dances in town and out of town. In those days, women during the week had to be in the dorms by 10 o'clock. If it was out of town in Portland on the weekends, they got to 12 o'clock, maybe 1. And if you weren't there when the house mother shut the door, you had a real time trying to get in. Or you may be penalized the next weekend, you couldn't go out or some silly thing. And so I forgot now where we were, back with the dorms. Men had no restrictions. You could come and go. Men could smoke in the dorms. Women couldn't, except they did do out the window of their rooms. The dorms were, Failing Hall was very genteel, kind of what I would call old-fashioned type furniture, but very nice. And no TVs in this time. I met my wife on a blind date my junior year. And one night we were sitting in Failing. Well, actually I was lying on the couch with my head in her lap. And the house mother came in and said, "Tom, that is not the proper way to behave in the lounge." And so, well, yes, of course. During those days, Sunday meals were dress. You had to wear a coat and tie and going to church with a type of dress. My wife saw me when I was going into Cosine Hall to get something. She was there to pick up something. This is where you got your blanks, your sheets, pillows, waste paper baskets, study lamps, all of that stuff. And so she had seen me because she was with my girlfriend, my boyfriend, my friend's girlfriend. And so we had this date. Now the date was, we went to the First Baptist Church to attend a convocation in the fall. And the late James L. Kraft spoke. That's a thrilling date in today's standard type of thing. So we got married just before my senior year. We selected a date that I could remember, September 1, and we honeymooned in Victoria. My wife grew up in Yakima, so the wedding was in Yakima at the First Baptist Church, of course. We stayed the night in Yakima, got the train to go to Seattle, took the night boat to Victoria. Couldn't afford the Empress. We ate there, but we stayed at another hotel nearby. We did the Bouchard Gardens. I rented a car. We were dressed like people were dressed in the 50s. Coat and tie, hat. My wife had high heels, gloves, and a hat in Bouchard Gardens. 30 years later, we went back and restaged all the photographs. Oh, wow. This time we were in shorts and Reeboks. And the only way to go. So that was what brought, the 60s were great. Brought a lot of freedom to Americans. After I graduated, I went to Berkeley Baptist Divinity School. We had 3 years there. My wife had a great job with the YMCA Oakland. I worked in a men's clothing store on Shattuck Avenue, and we enjoyed the city. And we would go to the city frequently. If you're going to the city or San Francisco, you dressed, and I mean you dressed. Coat and tie, a hat maybe, definitely for a woman. Long gloves or short gloves. Even to go to a movie, that was protocol, or to a restaurant. We enjoyed our time there very much. And then I got a small church in Spokane, and we're there 2.5 years. And I knew after the second or third month, I'd made a terrible mistake. This church wasn't like my home church. It was very divisive. It was an interesting experience. But fortunately, a man by the name of Earl Shipley, who at that time was alumni relations, development, church relations, and you name it, came by and we chatted. And he told me about a job at Linfield in admissions. And I really didn't know what he was talking about. The man who had a job, there was one man, and he wanted out, and they were going to hire 2 people. So we came down and had an interview, and the interview with Harry Dillon was all of 15, 20 minutes. We walked from his office, the president's office, to Larsdale Hall, because that's where we were going to live. And we were going to be house parents. And then I talked with Stein Jonason, who was the kind of the next in line. And he asked me a lot of questions. One question was, can you plan a party? And I said, yes, I can plan a party. And I said, why? And he said, well, we go to Portland sometime in the spring, and we go to, I can't think of the hotel, the Multnomah Hotel. Mm-hmm. And we take over what was called the Rose Bowl. And we invite parents and students to come to that. We take the faculty up, take the choir up, and everybody gets to meet people. And so I thought, well, yeah, that's no big deal. Yeah, I can give a party. When I got back to Spokane, I didn't hear from Linfield. My wife and I had gone to a movie, and just as we walked through the door, we had heard the phone. It was President Dillon saying they wanted me here at Linfield, and I'd have a contract in the mail, and if I wanted to come, sign it and return it. Well, I was excited. I mean, while we were in Berkeley, we were earning, between the 2 of us, about $5,000 a year. That's a lot of money in 1950. When we went to Spokane, we were earning about $2,000. Finally, my wife got a job at the Crescent Department Store, which is now Macy's. I got a job in the PR department of Reynolds Aluminum, rolling mills, directing people through and giving tours. So we had a lot more money than and then we got down to not much money. So having to Linfield, wow, we're going to have it. Well, we came in the spring of 1957. I went out with a staff member in admissions on a couple of trips. One weekend, the Baptist ministers arrived, and we're in the dorms. And that drove my wife mad. I mean, she says, I can't stand it. At that time, they hadn't put carpets on the hallway. But all the noise of the Baptist people can get very noisy. And so she says, we just got to move. And I noticed something being constructed behind Larsell, and it was Dana Hall. And I called the president, I stopped by his office, asked if we could have an apartment. So we moved in over there and lived there for 5 years, and then into town. When I came to Linfield, the student body was under 800. And my task was to try to get it to 800. Then the next jump would be 1,000 and 1,200, 1,500. But under President Dillon, typical of college presidents of that time, they were kind of the patriarch, paternal. They ruled. Faculty had some say. I'm talking about Linfield. Faculty had some say, but so far as faculty meetings go, no, there wasn't anything. There was. One meeting I'll never forget, and I don't recall what year it was. Our basketball team had gone to Alaska to play some basketball games with Alaska Pacific, I think it was called at that time. And on the way back, they acquired some souvenirs without paying. And so this became a big hubbub. President called a meeting of the faculty and the staff and met in Melrose, one of the classrooms. And he gave a pitch. Stein Jonason gave a pitch. We must be understanding, we must forgive. And my colleague, Paul Little, stood up and said, no, they were wrong. They need to be punished. And then Wynne Dolan, great professor, stood up and said, yes, they need to be punished. And one of the interesting experiences sitting there, I saw the blood drain from Dr. Dillon's face, and he resigned within 6 or 7 months, or a year. The kids didn't play basketball. The coach went out and recruited off the football team, anybody else. But we won the conference. It was amazing. Now, going back to Willamette, my wife's freshman year, this would be in 49, fall of 49. We played Willamette football here, and we won. The first time in 20-some years. And the president said at halftime, if we win, I will stand on my head out on the 50-yard line. And he did. And if you have seen that picture, it's somewhere in the archives. So that started, and then while I was gone, before I came back, the streak started. But there was always, during the early days of admissions, the high schools would give in Oregon, would give a half a day to the private colleges and a half a day to the public colleges. So we would go down to a high school. We might meet in the auditorium, we might meet in the gym, and we'd be all scattered around. One or two of us might get up and speak about financial aid, liberal arts, things of that type. And then we would divide up in areas. And Willamette, Pacific, Whitman, Whitworth, Puget Sound, PLU, we would all be there. Also, the women diploma programs in nursing would travel with us. And in fact, the October 12th windstorm, we were coming back from Klamath Falls, and I was driving, and we all had our own cars, but I was driving my friend from Pacific. We were heading back, but we also had 2 women from the School of Nursing, downtown Eugene. I don't remember now which hospital, but when we left, the lights were going like this over the street. And as we went out north, there would be a barn go down, shingles fly off of my house, and there was a very nice hotel north east of Eugene. And so I pulled in there, called my wife, and I said, you stay home, and when Donna comes, you guys, and Donna was Roger's wife, you stay there. So we went sailing on up the interstate, 75 miles an hour. I could put my hand out, and it was just like that until you hit the overpass. We got to Eugene, to Salem. We were laughing, having a good time. We saw the hotel top floor sitting in the parking lot. Smells a lot of natural gas. And we were two scared, shitless kids. And it took us over an hour and a half to get from Salem to McMinnville because of the trees that were down. And the way we came, I think 1 or 2 people were killed because of falling trees by Maud Williams State Park. But that was an interesting experience. The campus looked like a bomb had gone off. The Oak Grove was pretty well decimated, but it all grew back. Everybody was calling the college, how's the old oak? Is the old oak still standing? Yes, it's still standing. I'm wandering all the map here.
You're doing a great job of answering the questions that I haven't asked yet, so you're doing great.
Okay, let me just go back a bit here. Oh, during my freshman year, I was invited to participate in the just give me a minute here. May Day. May Day was a big celebration on college campuses, and then it disappeared. But my freshman year, I was invited by this woman to be our escort, and I didn't know anything about May Day, and I said, sure, I'll do it. I had to wear a white dinner jacket. All the sororities and some of the fraternities had teas, and so we had to go around to all of them, all dressed up, and to those functions. In those days, all the fraternities and all the sororities had floats in a parade, May Day parade. And the Deltas had a young man later on who created these monstrous things out of tissue paper and napkins, but they were quite spectacular. During my freshman year, the Deltas would run out, and I think the Thetas and the other groups, and decimate people's yards for blossoms to decorate their floats. But I could be wrong on that. I know the Deltas did. So it was kind of an interesting experience. Our daughter was going to be in the May Day, and she was born in 58. And then it ended up she had the mumps, and our son got to participate in it. The last May Queen was she's now the head of the law library at the University of Washington. Anyway, she was the last May Queen, and that was it. Well, some of the students next year, the following year, said they wanted to have some kind of function. And so they conceived the Flying Fowl Fair. And the Flying Fowl Fair was typically late 60s, early 70s. And I'll never forget, the art department had the most interesting bicycles and costumes I've seen in a long time. During that time, we had groups coming in, setting up a tent. And there was a young man with a pickup truck and a back, and he opened it up and he sold copper jewelry and things of that type. And his name was Gary Lawrence Gallery. It was just starting out. And we still have a pendant that he bought, that we bought, and he made. And then about 10, 15 years ago, he made for us some irises. So that was kind of an interesting. Also, during a little later on, we had a piano player, and he came from Portland. I had his name, but then maybe I'll go back to it. But he played at Linfield a number of times. When Harry retired, we had a new president, Gordon Bjork. And there's been a lot of controversy and a lot of discussion. I'm sure you've heard about Gordon Bjork. He had a difficult task, and prior to this, I don't think the faculty had much say on campus. And maybe they did and I didn't know about it. But he did give a lot of support to the faculty in making decisions. He had a task and he fulfilled it, but I don't think he was gracious in fulfilling the task. The one thing that I thought was great, he wanted us to be known nationally, and Harvard was sponsoring a 3-week workshop in admissions, and then the last week they would bring in high school counselors from prep schools, and so we got to meet a lot of different people, and I got to meet a lot of different admissions people, and I got to experience the Boston area, and we tried and we got a few students, but we weren't that successful. Just before I retired, the computers were coming in, and I thought they were great, but I didn't like the way they were going. I felt they were bypassing the individual touch, and so I was having mixed feelings. Also, I knew that we had to do something, and we did have some standard letters that we had developed. We met a student in the high school, and they put down what their interest was. Then we call attention to it in a paragraph. But that wasn't before computers, and we just paragraphed. So one night I was in San Jose, and flew in, and I've flown into San Jose many times. Staying at the Holiday Inn, which was 10 minutes from the airport. And it took me an hour to find the Holiday Inn. I didn't know I was coming down with cataracts, but I thought the car was dirty, and I kept wiping off the windshield. When I got to the room, I threw my bags on the bed, went down to the lounge, and I thought, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And that's when I came back, and well, I talked with my our annuity representative, who happened to be in Oakland, and that worked out. So I talked to my wife, and we talked about it, and I talked with Vivian Bowl, and so I couldn't retire with my birthday because my birthday's in January, and that's when admissions goes crazy. So I retired earlier than the 65, but it was the right choice at the right time, and I've enjoyed my time here. I think like this facility is great. When we acquired the property, there was a young man by the name of T.J. Day, and I had a call from his headmaster, and I think he had gone to Colby, but I'm not sure. Colby is khaki and white button-down shirts, at least in those days. And that's kind of the dress code of prep schools. You had to wear a coat, maybe a tie, but coat definitely at dinner and that type of thing. TJ was a Levi guy, and he just didn't fit into the mesh. So I gave him, I said, you can come here, but you have to go to summer school. And he did, and he came in, not knowing a lot about it, except that there was some money there someplace. And so when he came and liked Linfield, became very active, involved, I thought that was great. One day, I guess, Dave Hansen had been in Carmel and was taking pictures of houses and was showing them to his students at his house. And TJ was in that group, and he said, "Oh, that's my house." And then he told us that the previous owner had built pipes out into the sands to warm the beach up. So when you have money, I guess you can do all kinds of things. But he was a really fine individual for us. Now, I suppose I should tell you a little bit about the Baptist connection. I probably wouldn't have gotten admitted to Linfield. I was a terrible high school student. My pastor wrote a nice letter, and the fact that my mother, I mean, those are the two pluses. I was admitted. And it wasn't until I had a class from his hall is right over in, what's his name? Not Elkington, the next one.
Terrell?
What?
Terrell?
Sorrel? No. There's Elkington and, okay.
Hewitt, Anderson,
Hewitt, Anderson.
Whitman,
I can't think of it now.
Frericks?
Larson, no. Anyway, he was the one that, he was a lit professor, and I really discovered and learned how to read. And I got really excited about stuff. And so he was really very helpful to me. And I remember one day he said, "I know you're planning to go into the seminary, but there are a couple books that you need to read." and I wouldn't recommend them. And they were books that were somewhat banned from the general public, but I did learn a lot in the style in which they had been written. So I think getting to know faculty members, I was going to go into business, and I had to take an economics class, and I didn't understand what they were talking about. And so if I stayed with business, I could have graduated without a language. But going into English and literature, I had to have a language, and I had French. And the professor would work with me night after night. He had a little house at the end of Linfield Avenue, and I'd go and sit at his kitchen table while his wife was doing whatever she was doing. And we'd go over and over. I barely got through the class. I don't know, because of my hearing, I had a problem with hearing in those days, or what it was, but I appreciated the fact that he took so much time to push me through, even on a D. So, and I don't think those things have changed. People still greet each other, I've noticed, on the campus. In fact, my wife and I made the comment, when we came back on the staff, we had no children. And when we started our families, a number of faculty were starting families. So about 2 years ago, the opening of school, we had to have this big picnic out here on the Greenway over there. And kids were running all over. And I said, doesn't that take you back? And I think that's kind of neat. Been a great experience for me to be here and to see what has taken place. Now, Baptists. I tried to call on Baptist ministers, and the Baptist ministers, by and large, were extremely supportive of Linfield. And every year they would bring a group of students to the campus, and we put on a big old production of some kind. All the Baptist students would make sure they have a lot of beer cans to decorate their windows, make sure the new students be welcomed. That was just what you did. Then, over the years, I think young people didn't participate in a lot of activities. And maybe they backed out. I did have an interesting experience. I went to one church in northern Idaho, and we had students, and the minister says, I suppose Linfield's going to take on the new translation of the Bible. And I said, I don't know. But I think that was part of that. So when I was a student here, I would say that 70% of the student body were Baptists, even with the GIs. And that's probably true with Willamette and Pacific Congregationalists. Mm-hmm. The student body has changed in that regard, but I take a class from Bill Miller, and I guess some students are quite conservative. And they were there too. I was extremely conservative. And now I'm way over here someplace. So that's part of life, change your attitude. I just found some old sermons, and I've been chuckling over them. Oh my gosh. I mean, here's a school that you had the opportunity to hear Bishop Tutu. We got to meet and hear the Dalai Lama. I mean, they were on the Portland campus, University of Portland campus, but we got to be there and see that. One of the things that Charlie did, that Charlie Walker, was to bring people to the campus. And there was some, I mean, Jimmy Carter was one, now they all kind of fly out from the carpets of the brain. But anyway, a lot of very interesting individuals, which I think enriched and helped the community as well. And I've been very pleased with what has happened with the music department. The music department was always good. My wife came here as a music student. So that's been a solid. But what really impresses me most is the theater. I mean, I've seen some wonderful productions here, and I'm really proud of the students. I was in one production when I came back, and I was typecast. I was Sergeant Gregovich in the Tea House of the August Moon, and he's the guy who had fallen into the vat of beer, and he was drunk. And so my lines were very short and sweet, and I would practice at home. And one night I looked down, and my daughter was 2 or 3, and she was going just like her dad. So that was my theater experience. But I missed a couple of plays this year because of health issues, but that one on Iraq was powerful, and that one this year, the family business, was a riot. I mean, talk about dysfunctional families. It was great, and it was well done. I mean, the sets, Ty Marshall and the students that work with him, is just amazing. So I'm really impressed. Of course, our athletic program has always been pretty good. I mean, later years. I have a good friend, Doug and Janet Nichols, and they used to live in our same area, and they're Willamette grads, and he's just a couple years younger. And he taught at Beloit after he finished his doctoral work, and didn't want to live in Salem, didn't want to live in Portland. They both grew up in Portland, and so they settled here in McMinnville. One of the things I did after I retired, our church was asking for some kind of activity, and I said, why don't we do a walking group? And so we did organize, and we've had people anywhere 12 to 20, and that's been going on since 1993. And we walk the track every Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 o'clock to 8:30. We go down to Jake's and have coffee and share now email jokes. And that is something I've really enjoyed. But, so,
Who's a part of that group?
yes. Oh, who's the part?
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's see. Craig and Faye Singletaries. The Gilberts. Brian Gilbert's parents. Bernard and Roz Turner, he used to be a pastor here. Let's see, Doug and Janet Nichols, Tim and Diane Marsh, Edith Reynolds, Irene Stewart, and a couple of others.
It's a good group.
Yeah, we have a great time. And I have a reputation of pretty off-color jokes. I'm still playing my teenage years.
I see. Staying young at heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you touched on several of the presidents as far as your memories of them for Dylan and Bjork and Walker. I'm wondering if you have any particular memories of Vivian Bull when she was president here.
Yes, Vivian came and I was impressed and somewhat overwhelmed. She was really the main factor in getting the computers up and running on this campus. And prior to her arrival, I did have a really excellent candidate. And we chatted in my office. And I think we had him until he discovered what we didn't have in computers. And in a very short time, she did change those things around. I liked the way she enjoyed football and basketball and the other sports. She was very good about that. Now going back, I should go back to Charlie. We almost went under. I mean, Linfield almost died. Not because of one man, but because of economic conditions that came about. And so when Charlie came, he was trying to build us up. And one of the things we always had a big dinner for the faculty and families. And we put on a show, and we did a soft shoe, the administrators. And that was a riot. But Charlie also did something else. He discovered a book, the colleges that produced the greatest number of PhDs, and Linfield was mentioned. And we had a number of PhDs in science. And so he would push that all the time. Slowly, morale came over. The dorms, I said earlier, they were genteel. Men's dorms were never that way, but the women's dorms were always very... TV came in, and wow, everybody flocked to the dorms to watch TV. We also lost, I think, 4 students, maybe 5, one night, coming back from the Peavine party up in the hills, been drinking. And our chaplain at that now, Gordon Frazee, said to the board, we can't allow this to happen. So we must be able to provide alcohol for students in the dorm who are 21. And so we experimented with that. And then, of course, you can almost see the progression of from drugs to alcohol. I mean, when marijuana was being consumed, everybody was very laid back and you didn't have any major problems. Alcohol behaviors could get pretty rambunctious, and particularly the restrooms. Men's restrooms were always falling apart. You'd blam the doors and everything else. So, yeah, that was always kind of interesting then. But Charlie, that first year, also got the faculty to give a night or a day, and we cleaned up dorms for the new students. We did that for a couple of years because we just didn't have the money to bring in any outside personnel people. Charlie also did something else that maybe you don't realize. Maybe he selected some business leaders in Portland and said, you know, if you would give me $100, I'll tell you about Linfield, send you information. And so a number of people became interested in Linfield outside the McMinnville Baptist, because the board was, when I was a student, I think was pretty much Baptist in McMinnville. So this opened up a lot for the college. And Charlie made sure we were on a balanced budget, and everybody else since then was on balanced budgets. And I was delighted to hear, I think this fall, that Linfield's endowment was over $100 million. Not like Willamette's, but at least it's getting there. Mm-hmm. And so.
You've been on numerous committees and served on the Board of Trustees. We're curious, did you seek those positions out, or were you just always sort of involved in those things?
With the board, I had to give a report. And when Charlie was here, they would have board meetings on campus, but also a meeting would be at Salishan. Mm. And that's hard to take. It was fun. There would be a committee that I would report to, and that would be basically with the, we had the admissions committee. We had some faculty that would serve on that. And we had an English professor here, and she was a very interesting woman, and she left for either the University of Oregon or Oregon State, but she's written several books. I can't think of her name right now. But anyway, the admissions committee was always interesting. We'd have some great debates. Basically, most staff members could read the file, make a decision. If they had somebody that they wanted, but there were other issues that they would call attention to, bring that to the group. Mm-hmm. One of the experiences that I had at Harvard was to be a Harvard staff person in reviewing files. And I learned that legacy is very important, but not 100% legacy out of New England. If you had a student from Burns, and I happen to know of a student from Burns, who had the qualifications and wanted Harvard, he got into Harvard. And so that played. I'm bouncing around here. One of the things that Gordon Bjork did, establish some scholarships, just scholarships. So students could come to the campus and perform or work on a scholarship, questions, and receive a scholarship. And if they needed more financial aid, then of course that was provided. But that helped to really bring things up a lot. I'm very pleased about that. After I left Linfield, I was on the staff of Ford Family Foundation, and I was an interviewer for them. My former boss, Bart Howard, was also head of that. And so that was a fun time meeting those kids that became Ford Scholars. And I did not interview, I excused myself. My wife's nephew applied and was accepted. And during his sophomore year, we had a phone call. And he said, "Guess where I am? I'm standing in the center of Tiananmen Square, Chinese New Year's. I walked along the Great Wall of China this morning." We were just overwhelmed. And I think that has been a great addition to Linfield, this whole international experience. When I was a student here, the war was over, nobody was going overseas. I had a good friend who did go, but he was doing some kind of, I'm not sure what he was doing, to be honest with you. But everybody was more concerned about here than overseas. And I think that has been a great, and that came about, I think, through Charlie's era. And then the nursing program also came in about that same time, which added some more diversity. But the international, I think, is great. I keep telling students as I see them within our church and they're going off to college, and even my own grandkids, if you have the opportunity to study, not maybe you can't afford Europe, go back east, spend some time in another part of the country. It's amazing. And I think that's a really big plus for us. Lewis and Clark started this a long time ago when they had a group of students that came in and no place to put them. And so they sent them overseas their freshman year. So that was, speaking of Lewis and Clark, have you been on their campus? You have the Manor House where the freshmen gathered. I mean, you're coming in as a new student, see that gorgeous house. At least I was that way. So I kept telling Charlie, I said, why don't you buy a house out in the country club and we're going to turn your house into the admissions office. And then when the Meicho Book House could be available, several businessmen provided the funds to move it, and it came down here. And that to me was a big achievement, and I was very pleased that we were able to be outside. Melrose is okay, but just to have something that's a little different, I thought might make a good impression. So.
How have you seen the role of admissions change? You touched on it briefly with it being local and Baptist focused, but I'm curious to see how you lived it, seeing it become more global perhaps.
I think several things. We have 4, maybe 5 families that had gay children. And every one of them said, we knew that you were different when they were young. And I think, we now know that that's something that happens. Lots of things happen when genes get together, or don't happen. I think that helped us a lot. One funny story I will share. We went to Europe with the Fricks, and we were told about a particular pub that had a lot of character and typical British background to it. And we were trying to find it. So we came out to this one place, and she was ready to open the door. There was a young man standing there, put out his hand. Oh, madam, you don't want to go in there. This is a gay bar. And she put her hands on her hips and said, well, my son's gay, I don't care. And the poor kid looked like he had seen headlights of a car. Oh, that was funny. But I think we've always been, our guest minister Sunday talked about the word gay. I mean, we used the word gay to be, we were happy, and now it took on this other meaning. So that is something that we've moved over. As I've studied, the time I was in Berkeley, it was just at the beginning of the scrolls that were found. So a lot of things came about after they were read and pondered. I have never been one to say that every word and punctuation mark in the Bible was the word. I don't think God speaks English, King's English, any more than he speaks Hebrew. I think that we have made Jesus into a God. And I don't think he was a God. I think he was a man. Got to take my kids to see Jesus Christ Superstar in New York. And that was an awesome experience for them, for us. And yes, he was a man. That's it. And so that's where we've come. And thank goodness for Bill Miller. He's opened up a lot of different things for me. That's how I managed to function. And when, for example, in our church, our pastor was asked to marry a couple in Eugene. And we got the okay from the board. He got the okay from the board. He got to Eugene, didn't realize that they had arranged to have it televised. And oh man, we had people walking up and down the street in front of the First Baptist Church with signs. And we came there one Sunday, I've never seen my wife get out of the car and run across the street so fast in my life. And she was just giving those guys a bad time. And they left. To me, again, it's biological, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you have to accept them. And I hope that gives you a little more of an answer.
That was very insightful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Where do you see Linfield going in the future?
I hope they stay about the same, and I would hope that the faculty could be Phi Beta Kappa. No, there is a oh God, Phi Beta Kappa. I think it's Phi Beta Kappa. I can be wrong on that, but it's recognized that you've really achieved not only knowledge, but the grade and everything else and that. And I think it's nice to have faculty of that caliber. Mm. Speaking of that, I have attended a number of faculty lectures in Riley, and I've been very impressed with the new faculty. They know their subject. They're really individuals, I think, oh, I wish I could sit in their class. I think I'd like that. In fact, we're going to Ashland next month with the Linfield.
Oh, I love that.
And then the professor is going to be there to explain the plays, that type of thing.
What would your advice be to Linfield students of today?
You may have a plan that you wish to pursue, and it may be a good plan, but it may not work. And don't feel bad. I think having the background of a liberal arts education allows you to learn how to think and learn how to adjust to new situations. I think that's the value of a small liberal arts college. We can be small and something else, but I would say that would be my best advice, was be flexible. I mean, it may work out, it may not work out. The way our system goes, what we thought was going to be a major area is not so major anymore. So, a lot of my peers went into education and the ministry, and some in business, but a lot of in education out there. And I think that's a good area. I'm just impressed by the students that I've met, how diversified they are. I think that's great. Mm-hmm. No, I'm glad where Linfield is today, the way it's going. I think it has a very good future. I think Hallie does a marvelous job. And it's a whole, I'm not sure. I don't want to say it's a whole different academic, yet it is, and it isn't. But there is a sense there that it's just a little bit higher than it was when I was here. And we were improving over the years. I mean, when I came in, I didn't even know what an SAT score was. I mean, and I'm not sure. I think we required that either in the late 50s or early 60s, that we required the SATs and the ACTs then later on. But that has changed so dramatically in the last 20 years. I don't know if I would believe that the way we did 20 years ago. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Well, Tom, is there anything that we didn't cover or anything that I should have asked you?
I kind of wandered around the moon and back again. Sorry about that.
No, please. I mean, we did go through all of my questions.
It's been fun, and I hope it's helpful for